Hi and welcome to Field Security Training. In this session we are going to be talking about kidnapping. As always, if you've got any questions during this training session, just chuck them into the comments, or alternatively, if you have any concerns or questions later, just fire them in the comment box and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So it's worth having a little bit of a pause to try and understand this situation. So the risk of kidnapping. If let's try and sort of orientate ourselves onto this map. Sort of red is more dangerous, green is less dangerous as before, and the green bits or sort of turquoisey bits here are affected where there's sort of risks of piracy, in particular off the coast of Somalia and Yemen, across here, top of Libya, across over here near Nigeria, and across over here in parts of the Pacific Islands. So from that also, it's worth sort of pointing out where some of these sort of concerns are again in terms of, we're talking Somalia here, we're talking about Central African Republic, south part of Libya, various parts around the Pakistan-Afghanistan borders, and in the Middle East as well as over here in the sort of Central Americas. There's a little bit of concern, and a little bit over in Europe as well. It's worth understanding where those risks are and to try and take appropriate concerns. But the bottom line is, do you know what? Kidnapping can happen anywhere. So what are the causes and the sort of the tells that might indicate that you might be in a nation with a greater chance of kidnapping? Is down here along this side here. So we're talking about places where we've got increases in amounts of unemployment, poverty, illiteracy, where there's sort of religious sorts of dominance, or in terms of fundamentalisms going on there, in particular where there's higher sort of areas of greed, or sort of corruption, in particular within politics, or just corruption in general in terms of how that nation just operates. That's the sort of place, that's the sort of tells that you can perhaps use if you're in a nation that's more likely to have various kidnapping. But the bottom line is, it could potentially happen anywhere, and it's always worth being prepared for that eventuality. So we'll go through now a little bit of a video as to how to prepare for that.
The first few minutes of an abduction attempt are crucial, and usually the most dangerous period of the whole event. If you resist the situation, the abductors may become dangerous. However, if you are in a public place, this may be your only chance to escape during this entire ordeal. Drawing attention to yourself and the assailants may bring others to your assistance. After that initial snatch, you will probably find yourself in a car or a closed building, somewhere there will no longer be anyone to assist you in your plight. The police recommend that you do as little as possible to endanger yourself or others, but a decision in this initial stage of the abduction could be crucial. As impossible as it may seem, with a pounding heart and adrenaline flowing through your veins, try to remain calm and focus on what is happening around you. The more composure you have, the easier the ordeal will be for your abductors, and ultimately for you too. Keep your eyes open and watch what is happening. Make mental notes. How many captors are there? What do they look like? What do you consider their nationality and/or race to be? What accent do they have? Which brand of cigarette do they smoke? And what kind of everyday profession would you imagine them performing? How old are they? Do they seem well prepared and professional, or do they seem like opportunists? Are we dealing with career criminals? Examine your surroundings. Where are you being held? Is it an office? A warehouse? What kind of business is usually conducted here? Are there any company logos, motives, stationery, or any objects that could assist the authorities in tracking down a location? Observe the surroundings. Would you be able to describe the room, the car, or the location of your temporary hosts? If in transit, you should count turns and measure distance by counting as you travel. 1, 2, 3, 4 left, 1, 2, 3 right, and so on. Try to work out why you have been abducted. There are various motivations, from basic financial kidnap and ransom to political leverage or sexual abuse. Once you establish what your role is in the abductor's plan, you are in a better position to negotiate your way out of it. You will always be worth more alive than dead unless you sense that you are going to be made an example of. Try to objectively ascertain what your role is and what is expected of you. Play to your captor's better nature. Try to put your captor at ease by remaining calm and cooperating. It is never wise to make threats or become violent, no matter how impossible the situation may appear to have become. Don't beg or plead, remain calm, strong, and keep your dignity. Speak when spoken to, and if possible, build up a relationship with your captors without coming across as trying to manipulate them. Be their friend. Remember, they are more than likely under as much stress as you. They have been driven to this situation by mental illness, political persecution, or financial desperation. At no time tell them that their cause is delusional. Humor them. Attempt to make their cause your cause. Have them think you're a valuable cog in their intricate plan rather than a wrench. Escape or not to escape? Well, that's a personal decision influenced by the circumstances of your situation. Most authorities and experts insist that you should never attempt to escape, claiming that you are statistically more likely to end up dead if you decide to make a run for it. But if you are being held by people who clearly intend to kill you, then there isn't much to lose and it may make perfect sense for you to try and bolt. Use the steps mentioned above to gauge the situation and understand what your kidnapper's real intentions are. If and when a rescue attempt is made, make sure you are in a safe place and do not draw attention to yourself. This is the most dangerous point of the whole process. The first few minutes during a rescue attempt is when kidnappers might decide to kill their captives. Hide from your captors. Try to get behind an object large and thick enough to provide a barrier against any stray bullets and wait it out. You are no longer your captor's friend. You are their hostage and you need to stay calm and wait for the cavalry to find you.
Okay, so that's a really helpful sort of overview of this situation. So the next bit we're going to go through is if you choose to go, when is the right time to go? So this, like I said, it's been covered in the video. It's really down to a very much a personal choice, your choice, whether or not you try to leave or you stay in the situation. I'll just go through now, just so that you're aware and you've just got the facts in terms of the different stages that's likely to happen in terms of a kidnapping situation. So we're starting from this end and working our way through. So the first stage is the potential grab. So if you want to try and understand how to try and avoid that, just go to the living in dangerous countries sort of session and just make sure that you pay attention to the advice in that to try and minimize your risk of being grabbed in the first place. Stage one, it transits to a safe house. I'm going to talk a little bit of how to potentially escape out of a boot. I'm going to come on to that next. When you're in the safe house, or alternatively that initial sort of holding area, that's probably the most likely or the best chance you've got a chance of actually escaping. I'm going to talk a little bit later about how to escape from restraints as well, to try and give you advice for that. This is probably the most likely place where you're going to be able to escape, because the further down you go down this line, you're probably going to be dealing with more professionals or more competent individuals, or the secure house is probably going to be that much more secure. So if you are going to go, it's probably trying to go in this earlier stages before going out. Like I said, it's an absolutely a personal choice, your choice as to whether or not you wait it out or alternatively you try to escape. So first bit, how to escape out of the boot of a car. So there's a number of routes that you can go out. So one way is to try and go out through the back seats. Quite often there's a lever or a leverage or something on the inside the boot that you can actually open up and actually escape out of the back of the seats and then get outside the door. So when's this likely to happen, or when you can potentially use this? Clearly, you know, if there's no one in the back seat sort of pushing you back, you know, that's something you're just going to have to listen to while you're in the back boot of the car as to what's going on. Alternatively, you may feel that people have actually parked up and you've and there's people outside of the car. Be aware the sort of the driver or passenger will be watching exactly what's going on, so this could potentially put you in a little bit of risk and is a little bit more difficult to move out, especially if you're sort of bound up a little bit. So another option that you can have is to try and actually release the boot hook. So the way that a boot mechanism, regardless of how complicated or clever or shiny looking the car is effectively is that you've got a hook and a little receiver on the other side that effectively forms the lock, and effectively the way that's open is just through a cable. So if you can just go through the various areas within the car to try and identify where this pull cable is, so it could be directly above the latch and you can just try and pull away some of the material there and actually identify where this cable is. The sort of thing that it might look like is just here, and it's just how it works. If you could just pull that would potentially release it, and you don't actually need the mechanism that's driver controlled or alternatively used by the lock. It's worth just tracing that across. It could be anywhere in the boot, and just pull away bits of the carpet to try and see what's going on, or the covering that's inside the boot on the side of the car where the lock is at on the boot. Okay, the next thing you can try and do is, if you can't manage to open the lock itself, is to try and find, is there something in the boot that you can use to try and prise it open? You know what, there might be a really helpful little bits of screwdrivers or a crowbar or whatever it is to try and prise open that lock. Another one that you might be doing is, that's quite often in a lot of cars, is something to change the tyres, a car jack here. So you can potentially, just dig up around underneath where it might be the spare wheel, try and dig out where that car jack is, and then effectively just prise that into a position onto the boot, and then start turning that handle and prising open that jack box, the jack, so that it just prises open the boot, and you might be able to get out. An alternative way, if you can't do all that lot, is to try and get some form of help and bring some attention. So if you go to either side, so the far left or the far right of the boot, there's the light cluster. Quite often to get to that, you just need to take away that bit of plastic that's just making it decoratively looking nice. Remove that bit of plastic, and behind there you'll be able to see the wires and the light cluster itself. Now, if you can push that light cluster out and effectively that falls out onto the road or whatever, you can then open your hand and you can start just waving. And you know what? That's something really quite weird. And someone will perhaps raise the alarm or concern, call the police or wherever it is, to try and highlight the fact that actually, do you know what, there's someone actually stuck in this boot, and you can just perhaps get a little bit of support to you. And all of these, obviously, it's worth recognising, when to do that. Once that boot is open, the likelihood is that the driver might see that sort of movement in their rear view mirror, so that will raise the alarm at that point. So it's worth consciously understanding what's happening around you. Also, use the road noise and the noise inside the boot to understand how quickly you're travelling, because you know what, jumping out of a boot at 70 miles an hour is going to cause you an awful lot more pain than it is at 30 miles an hour. Arguably, both could well be better than staying in the kidnap situation. Again, your personal choice, but it's just worth just listening to the surroundings around you, just so you can make those informed choices. And here's 4 mechanisms of actually trying to get out of the boot of a car. So, the next bit, trying to get out of restraints. So this is potentially that you've been grabbed, you've then been transited, you've not been able to escape out of the car itself, and it's a case of now trying to work out how to do a little bit of getting out of restraints. Now, in order to do this, you do need to have a little bit of preparation, so it's probably worth having a little bit of mind to this. So you can potentially hide things like keys to handcuffs and various little haircuts like this, a little bit of a razor, if you're transiting some compasses and things like that. But really, kind of like you can have these things that might help you, and these are the tools I'll be showing in a couple of minutes of what you need to try and get out of particular situations. You can hide them under like a bandage or whatever, because you just have them benign or sewn into your clothes. If you have them, you've now got tools that you can use to try and get yourself out of a bad situation. Clearly, if you don't have them, it's just a little bit more difficult, but still possible. Okay, how to escape from restraints. So the best way is to try and take charge of the situation without the kidnappers realizing what's going on. So the likelihood is that you're going to get your hands tied at some stage in a kidnapping situation. So present your hands in a way that gains you the most amount of favor. So the way to do that is, if you look at your hands, if you present them nice and flat like this, you haven't got an awful lot of wiggle room. Whereas if you present your hands like on the diagram like this, that you'll get tied up, but what's available is an awful lot of space for you to then start being able to do a little bit of wiggle room around whatever's been used to restrain your hands. So if you just practice that now, so what you're looking for is, as you can see in the diagram there, is that you can cup it around, and you're making your hands and your feet, sorry, not your hands, your feet, your hands to look just like that, so you can present, but inside you've got all that little bit of wiggle room. Does that kind of make sense? So if you just practice that in terms of the presentation, so that is you taking a little bit of charge in terms of giving yourself a little bit more opportunity by presenting your hands in the right way. Next, how to escape from restraints. So say, for example, you've now been tied up, or potentially you've been given duct tape around your hands, around your wrist. I'll explain now how to escape from duct tape. Okay, so the duct tape technique. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our elbows and we're effectively going to try and drive them across our body to try and break these bindings. Naturally, our hands are in this position presented as well, but equally this technique works if our hands aren't in that position. If we start off on our knees as well, just to make it a little bit more comfortable and a little bit easier, and effectively what we're doing is going to just drive our elbows through towards our back. Very much sort of that Johnny Wilkinson sort of pose. So after 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're free. Okay, now we've gone through how to try and get out of duct tape. It's a similar sort of pattern if you want to try and get out of parcel tape. It's just important on parcel tape that you try not to overfold the creases, because it just makes it a bit thicker and a bit harder to get out of, but it's all possible to get out of. So any form of tape, just use those techniques. Right, now moving out of a zip tie. So a zip tie, you can try this at home, but in compared to trying with a duct tape, this will hurt more and you will end up with some form of marks on your wrists to try and get out of it. But you can practice this at home if you so wish. Basically how to do this is that you get yourself with the zip tie that's around you, and effectively in exactly the same way as we did with the duct tape, you just push that through, and it'll hurt more, but just do it with confidence and do it with an assurance that you're actually going to try and get this thing done, and just smash it through, and you will open it up, as we can see. The other way is, do you know what, if this is on you and you want to try and get out of it, and you perhaps got a little bit of paracord that you've got and you don't want to actually cause that little bit of pain onto your wrists, you can saw out of the zip tie as follows. Boom, and you're out. Alternatively, you might be in a place where, do you know what, they've tied you behind your back. That is really more, that's really quite irritating. So you can still get out of it though, it's just a little bit more fiddly, but again, it's straightforward. It's effectively using the duct tape methodology again, but this time instead of using your chest to try and get it out, you're going to be utilising your bum. And there we are, and you're out. Okay, so that is zip ties. It's also possible to get out of handcuffs, but I will cover that in the private session, and we'll hopefully enjoy as we go through that bit. So, in summary, what to do in the event of some form of kidnapping. Initially, you need to raise the alarm, try and make a huge amount of noise to try and bring attention, which might just detract or put a little bit off the people who are trying to kidnap you, and then so you can run away. If you can't, the important bits to remember is to try and stay calm. Stay positive at all times if you possibly can, as you're moving from one place to another, to try and help understand your better and to help yourself understand what's going on, and also to potentially help the police or the government in the future to try and work out who actually did all this lot, is to try and understand and sort of gather a little bit of intelligence. So, you know, what are your surroundings, what's going on, make some mental notes in terms of, you know, where are you, so you can try and sort of gauge as to where you are, what information can you recall in terms of what's going on, and to try and work out why on earth have you actually been ransomed in the first place, or you've been kidnapped in the first place for potentially ransom. While you're there, try and win the kidnappers over by appearing empathetic, or you know, you recognise, you know, why they're trying to do that, and just try to get them on your side. Don't beg, but try and just get them on your side, and also try and make your own decision. You know, do you wait this out and let the natural authorities rescue you in the right manner, or alternatively, do you want to consider escaping? If you do decide to escape, you've now been given some tips. Clearly, it's down to your own choice, and if you're completely unfamiliar without doing them sort of and practicing them, they're more likely to not work. But so it's definitely worth having a little bit of a practice before you end yourself in that situation. But the real important thing is just to plan and try and not find yourself in that situation in the first place. So that was preparing and responding to a kidnapping, and as always, try and save your rights in notes and to have a little bit of a refresh later, the quickest and easiest way to find this video is just to subscribe, or alternatively future tips I chuck on. And that was kidnapping, and I will see you in a later session.